Are we recording?
No, I just had a practice.
Okay.
The Land and Water Forum. I don't get it. The Land and Water Forum is made up of business people and environmentalists, right? 50-50.
No.
No?
No.
But if it's not, where's the fairness in that?
Well, it's worse than you think, because it's not just that numerically it's dominated by industry, but the industry people have all of their scientists and all of the the resources.
Well, what do you mean their scientists?
Well, they can afford to. They pay for the research.
No, research is empirical. I mean, you can't change it.
No, you can't change it, but you can just not publish the things that you don't like, and you can only study. I mean, the classic example is the groundwater scientists who can't get funding to study the life in the groundwater. The scientists that are looking at the estrogens in the water, they can't get funding, and yet the people who want to look at how you can gain from adding water and fertilizer and all that kind of thing, any amount of funding. So and you've got a government who want to double agricultural production. That's their stated aim, and so they are in the intensification game. So the government, the science, everything is funded and set up around making more intensification, and then there's just this handful of people representing the green groups.
The green groups,
the green team they call them.
The green team.
Yeah, which is the one that's falling apart.
Can you stop thumping the table with your hand?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I'm trying to make my point.
All right.
I hope that's staying.
So here's the thing, I'm part of the green team in a way, but we see our advocates as being forest and bird fish and game.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
The public see forest and bird fish and game. They pull out of the water forum. We don't think there's anybody else there looking after our interests, but Nick Smith says that there are. Who are the people looking after our interests who are still in the water forum? Whitewater kayakers? I'm not interested in those guys. They're interested in specific parts of rivers where they can play. But the rest of it, the parts where we recreate with our kids, who's advocating for them?
Yeah, well, I don't think that anybody is really. Once Forest and Bird pulled out, Eco pulled out, the ones that did represent the general public, not specific interests, have pulled out. I guess Guy Salmon would claim that he represents more than that.
So who's Guy Salmon?
He's ecologic.
Ecologic.
Logic.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Depends what school you went to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he's in there. He's been in there, and you'll never shift him. So when this announcement came out recently, the only ones that supported, supposedly outside of industry, and that just reminds me, when the announcement came out, there was no complaint from Federated Farmers or from Dairy New Zealand or Fonterra.
What announcement? The announcement.
Well, when Nick Smith recently made the announcement that by 2040 the rivers would be swimmable and all that kind of thing. Sure. No opposition whatsoever from industry.
Gotcha.
And when they're silent, they've got their way. And the only people that are kicking up an argument are, Choose Clean Water and myself and Forest and Bird and Greenpeace. They are the ones who are saying no, this is wrong. But the ones who were supporting, who came out in support, that I picked up on were EDS, Gary Taylor, Guy Salmon, Ecologic, and they are the Land and Water Forum. They're the only greenies left, supposedly green ones left on that Land and Water Forum.
Who makes up EDS? Environmental Defence Society?
Yeah.
Who are they?
Half a dozen people funded by mostly the Law Society, so lawyers really, and they do some great work around law, but it seems that anyone who was involved in this Land and Water Forum has this they believe in this collaborative process. They believe that being in there makes a difference, so that they can make a difference by being in there. And they violently refuse to, be questioned on anything that's happened or failed to happen.
So therefore, Land and Water Forum now, with those, now it's been vivisected, they've taken out the back states and the good, if you're left with a skeleton of destructors, if you like.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we see it. So it's perception. The public think, it's the Land and Water Forum, therefore.
Yeah.
our issues have been looked after.
Yeah.
Someone said to me it's a bit like the peace process in the Middle East. Sometimes people are talking in a room, they think some kind of progress has been made, but meantime the Palestinians have been ground into the dust as the talking goes on.
Yeah.
Is that
exactly
a fair analogy?
Yeah. So you look back over the last 7 years or more that Land and Water Forum's been going, every time there's been...
7 years?
Yeah. It's at least 7 years. Yeah. Every time something's happened, Nick Smith or the government has said, oh, but we've got the Land and Water Forum. It's all been looked after in the Land and Water Forum. What the Land and Water Forum has allowed is another 7 years of intensification. The only thing that actually stopped it, slowed that intensification was that the milk price dropped.
So tell me how you've got to guess this. If you have, say, David Cagle down in Canterbury running the process for Nick Smith, he's his glove puppet, if you like. In that process in Canterbury, he's establishing all these irrigation programs, everything is slowly being put in place. Meantime, he's talking to everybody else. He's talking to us in good faith, chat. And while the chatting is going on, all this stuff is happening. Again, like the Middle East. At the end of this year, he might sort of leave and give up, and might have a government change. But in which case, it doesn't matter because everything's in place anyway. So he would have put the machinery in place. He walks off and it grinds on. Can you dismantle that? Could a government change actually dismantle what they've done?
I don't know. I mean, this has been such a good ploy, such a clever ploy to just. I'm sure it's the same in the Middle East. You can pretend to be. You can set dates in far off distance when you won't have to face the music.
Yeah, it wasn't nothing. Cagle said to me once. He said, "If we're wrong, we'll go back and relook at it."
Yeah, he's going to be in the grave.
He's going to be in the grave. Yeah, I'll be with him. Yeah, we'll be down in the 80s together.
Yeah.
Don't you like your coffee?
Oh, it's actually not what I'm used to. But.
Well, it's stunt coffee. It's just for the camera. Nick Smith, he can't be that bad. Can he?
I don't see how he could be much worse.
But he said on the radio. I've got a radio. Like many people, and on the radio it said, national radio, so it's got to be true, that he was going to clean up our rivers so we could swim in them by 2040. Now it gives me the incentive to live a bit longer. Yeah. Just to see that happen.
Because they all used to be swimmable, but now they're not. But he's going to make them swimmable by 2040. Yeah. He's going to make 90% of them swimmable. 90%. That's what he said.
So he's going to be a good guy.
Yeah, no, it just sounds wonderful, doesn't it? But actually,
of
course, there's a but. Actually, it's just the biggest, scam ever, and the scams get worse because the whole national policy statement, which was touted as a fresh start, fresh water, was actually weakening all the limits. This follows on from that. He's had a lot of pressure from the likes of Choose Clean Water and the petition to the public are kicking up lots of anger about not being able to swim in our rivers. So he's responded with this. But when you look at the detail, it's actually the biggest scam ever.
Well, not quite. Iraq was the biggest scam. But so people don't look at detail though, the public. Right. They know there's a Land and Water Forum out there somewhere which is going after their best interests, right? Yeah,
that's what they're told, aren't they? So, and actually a lot of the stuff that's in this thing came from the Land and Water Forum, which is a real worry. Yeah, and I don't think they realise how the industry wrote the rules. So I'll try and explain just how much of a scam. So he doubled the allowable number of E. coli that are allowed to make it swimmable. So previous to this, about 30% of our rivers are swimmable. And so by shifting it from 260 E. coli to 540, so doubling it, he then made 70%. So just by changing a number, he made 70% of our rivers swimmable.
Okay.
He just thinks he can get away with by just conning people.
Show me in detail how it works. I can't get it. I don't get the...
Yeah, well, I mean, just to explain the swimmable thing, I'll give you an analogy. Yeah. So imagine if the Minister of Police made an announcement that they're going to cut drink driving by 90% by 2040, and they were going to achieve that by, make that announcement. But then you have a look at the detail and you find out that actually they're going to achieve that by doubling the blood alcohol limit from what it was before, and that they're only going to test every 10th person, and that's how they're going to do it. So if you did that, obviously you'd be laughed out of the room. But somehow Nick Smith thinks he can do that and not be laughed out of the room. And
that's interesting because with that analogy of yours, people's children would get killed on the street.
yeah.
So is someone going to get injured by dirty water?
Yeah, well, people have been. I need to see what happened at Havelock to see, not just 5,000 people getting sick, but 2 or 3 of them getting, illnesses that'll probably kill them or they'll have for life. So it is deadly serious, and we can joke about it, but the swimmability thing is not the only thing. Obviously, E. coli is not, whether you're going to get sick from pathogens is not the only reason whether you want to swim or not. There's a whole lot of other things that go into it. The health of the river, but to explain how that's been changed, we really need to get into a bit more detail. I need to put my science hat on, and we need to go to the whiteboard so I can work through the science and just try and show, what's happened.
You've got your own whiteboard?
Yeah, we've got a whiteboard. I'm prepared. Let's go to the whiteboard, shall we? What I want to explain here is what happens to a river with excess nitrogen. So what the farmer puts the nitrogen on the land to grow more grass. Most of it ends up, 80% of it roughly, ends up in our waterways, where it grows algae instead of grass, which causes all kinds of problems. It blankets the habitat, but probably the worst thing is how it affects the oxygen. So I'll first start off with a healthy, normal river doesn't have excess algae growth, excess nitrogen. Then around 100% over that 24-hour period is the level of oxygen, same as we have constant oxygen in the atmosphere. What happens in an unhealthy river is that the oxygen starts to decline because of the photosynthesis happening with the plants, and then it dips down, and then it dips up again in the afternoon, and then it dips down again. So you get this massive fluctuation. And what happens is that anything probably less than sort of 70 or 80%, so down in this period here, nothing can survive. Well, most of our fish can't survive, so they're dead in this zone here. So there's another thing built into these limits. So the nitrate drives the algal growth. There's also a control, a limit on the amount of algae that's allowed, and this limit is good because we know that the amount of algae is the problem, but there's a fishhook in it, in that you're allowed to exceed these limits 17% of the time. Well, it turns out that the problem only happens around less than 17% of the time, because it's only in late summer that the algae grows and all these problems happen. But it doesn't matter, because the fish can die within that 17% of the time. It doesn't matter that for 83% of the time it's okay, because they're already dead. So what this little trick that they've done here is to shift the goalposts is they're now talking about nitrate toxicity, which is a totally different thing, and I'll explain how they get the toxic level. This is the level of nitrogen that would actually kill the life in the river. So they take a tank full of water. So imagine a tank like that. It's got some water in it. It's got a few fish in it, and you just keep adding nitrogen, pouring nitrogen in until they start to die. And when you've got that limit, then you know what the level. And it turns out that at 6.9 milligrams of nitrogen, 20% of the fish die. So that's what they call the LDL 20, that's where the limit comes from. But what the reality is that they can't die twice. They're already dead, because they died back down here somewhere when that nitrogen level got over 0.44 and it started to cause that big fluctuation in oxygen. When the oxygen dropped down, they die. They can't die again later when the toxicity cuts in. So it's just the most stupid measurement you could imagine, and it's just a bit of shifty work to be able to shift the goalposts from 0.5 milligram right up to 6.9 milligrams.
It's going to go to the Ministry of Thingies. Oh God, it's coming towards us now. It's going to be a smacking. What's this?
Daniel, Lena.